They're all around me. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself never to play that damn game. They say I'm crazy, and maybe I am. Maybe whatever it is that haunts me took my sanity and hid it away, somewhere where it's impossible to find it, somewhere dark and sinister. Maybe they buried it deep down into the core of the earth, and it's just sitting there, waiting to be found. I sound crazy, don't I? You think I'm crazy, and it's okay, because I think I am as well. I'm going to share this story, and I'm going to share it as much as possible. And I don't care if you don't believe me. All I ask from you is to read this story, and don't make the same mistake as I made. I'm sure you heard of the true hauntings, such as the haunting of Connecticut and the Amityville, and maybe you even see the movie The Conjuring. That was based on true events. You were never heard of this one. Though those hauntings cannot compare to what I've been witnessed. Nothing can. It was 2005 when I came across an old apartment building. I had just finished my first semester of my college year, and I was walking alone to my dorm from the bar. I was always alone. I didn't have many friends other than Jake and his brother Joel, my roommates, but they were just always busy doing something else with their girlfriends, and I always was alone, hoping that my bottle of whiskey would solve my problem. When I came across the old building, I heard of the creepy and demonic melody playing from inside. It sounded like a music box, and it was echoing somehow. I had this strange urge to go inside and find out where it was coming from. I threw my bottle of whiskey and broke it against the curb. I walked to the abandoned building. Somehow I would never do it if I was sober. My footsteps echoed throughout the building as I walked the halls. Most of the windows were boarded up and dust filled with air, clinging onto every object that existed. I could actually taste the dust as I broke into my mouth and into my throat, causing me to cough. I moved at a luxurious pace. Dust spiraled up into clouds as I wandered the halls, searching for wherever the music was coming from. I know it sounds stupid, but I was always drawn to the sound. It was some weird effect on me. I walked into the room where the music had just stopped. The room was just like the rest of the building, old, dark, dusty, and dark. I used the light from my cell phone to examine the old paintings that hung on the wall. I noticed how weird it was. Most of the rooms had furniture left in it. It looked as whoever were living there just got up and left, leaving behind everything. As I searched the room, I had this overwhelming sense that someone or something was watching me. I felt like if I were to turn around, something would be there. I turned around, but I didn't see anything, but I had some sense that something was there. Something was watching me. I heard the creepy melody echo from beneath the floor, and I had to find out where it was coming from. I don't know why. It just seems like there was no force to be sound, like I had no choice in the matter. The melody was just coming from beneath a dusty rug, and I pulled up the rug. Dust scattered into the air like a dust storm. I felt the floor lightly shaking, and it made a sound similar to a heartbeat. This sounds crazy, but it almost had said, it's almost as the force had a pulse. there was a door on the floor, and it opened up, leading to the storage area. It was a deep hole around 12 feet, which is why there was a ladder, maybe made from a rope. I climbed down the rope. Another thing I wouldn't ever do if I was sober. There wasn't much in there, just some old books and a box and a creepy Venusian doll with long black hair and big round eyes, dark eyes. I noticed there were strange melody was coming from the box. I picked up the box and started to climb the rope. I couldn't help but fear that something would grab me and pull me back down. It me made it back up, and I placed the game on the floor, shining a light over it with my phone. It looked like a briefcase, but it was made of something like black stone, with some strange word, Iklomori, carved into the center. I brushed the dust off with my hand and opened it. I noticed it wasn't a box or a briefcase. It was a board game. The strange structure of the board game was similar to the game of life, but there was a cemetery theme, and it was the center of the board. It had appeared to be a human heart in a small glass dome. I've never seen anything like this before. I had 6 game pieces that took the shape of tombstones and were made of real stone. On the right side, it was a deck of red cards. On the left, it were black cards. I noticed there was writing, small writing called inside the game. If you dare to play, beware of demons. I figured it was just all for scare, and so I did something that I wish I hadn't done. I was curious, lonely, drunk, and curious. There were there was a there was a wheel at the bottom of right corner of the game that had numbers ranging from 0 to 9, and the objective was to spin the wheel and move the game piece to the amount of whatever the number spun. Place a game piece to the starting point, and I spun the wheel. I watched it spin around and around until eventually it stopped at 4. I was going to move my piece up 4 spots when suddenly it began to move on its own. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it stopped. I froze in fear for a few seconds. Normal people would probably ran off by then, but for some strange reason I just kept playing. Amusing, there was a logical explanation for this. I've always been that way. I've always lived by that way. My father told me, believe in nothing you hear and only half of what you see. Apparently, when I spun a 4, it landed on a blank space. According to the game, blank spaces meant you had to draw a black card. Black cards were more like tips or secrets. They weren't always bad. I picked up a black card from the deck. The words were in Japanese, but at the bottom of the cards, in smaller letters, they translated in English. I looked at the card and read it out loud. Keep an eye on the doll. I, I looked over at the hole in the floor. As I stood up on my feet, I slowly walked towards it, lightly shaking. My teeth were grinding against each other. As I got closer, I leaned over the hole, and as I felt my heart knocked on my chest, begging to come out, there was no doll. She was just gone. quickly left the old building and ran to my dorm room, which was just 5 minutes away. My roommates were all with their girlfriends, sitting on the couch when I burst open the door. Suffocating in sweat and fear, I told them what happened, without leaving out any single detail. They didn't believe me, of course. I'm not really sure if I expected them to, but I sure did hope they would. They called me crazy, and I had way too much to drink, and they would help me to bed. I hope they were right. I'd rather be crazy than to know what just happened was real. Almost a week went by, and I had forgotten all about it. I figured maybe it was nothing after all, and that I made a bigger deal out of nothing, that I needed to stop drinking, believing that would never cure my loneliness. It was almost like an entire whole week since the incident, and I thought I wouldn't have to worry about ever going back to that old building. I thought my troubles were over, but found out that they were even close to over. They were only just beginning. Something strange happened to me, only explainable in Twilight Zone episode or a Stephen King book. I was in school as usual, walking down the hall to my class. It was strange because I was the only one in the halls, and the lights were dim and flickering. I heard the whisper as it echoed from behind me. Ekamari. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I had no idea what I was going on or what happened until I heard the music. It was some haunting melody, and it echoed through the halls. I started walking faster, scampering the hall, but it seemed like I was walking in circles. Everywhere I went, no matter how fast I walked, I was going nowhere. I kept walking until I saw somebody or something at the end of the hall. I couldn't really see who it is because I was too far away, but it looked like a woman. She was just in a white dress, and her hand was tilted at an unusual angle. Ekamari, she said more than once in a very unsettled tone that just echoed through the halls. She had a Japanese accent, and I thought I was dreaming, but I was very much awake. She continued to whisper, "Come back, Gordon. We're waiting for you." I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare that I wouldn't wake up from. She kept talking to me. I had no idea if how she knew my name. Gordon? I see you. Gordon, come back. The most creepy part about her voice was the somewhat happy tone and the way it echoed, and I turned left and I noticed I found my classroom. I walked inside. Everybody was just looking at me like I was crazy. I guess they saw the fear in my eyes. I looked out into the halls and everything was normal, as if nothing ever happened. My teacher scolded me for being late and I took my seat. I was clearly the only one who was experiencing that nightmare. So I didn't want to bring it up because I know that everyone else would say that I'm crazy and that I'm losing my damn mind. That wouldn't have been wrong anyway. I waited until I got back into my dorm room to bring up with my roommates. They again thought I was crazy and they were no help at me at all. I've heard the haunting melody every night while in bed and every morning while in school. Something was haunting me, and I know that sounds crazy, but it was just a board game. I didn't know if it was cursed, possessed, or whatever, but it was haunting me, and was it was driving me to the brink of losing my sanity. It was nothing but the melody for an entire week. Until one day, something strange happened. I was alone in my dorm room. The other guys were out on dates like every Friday night. I heard the melody. It squeezed through the cracking of my window. It echoed off the trees and right down to the soul. I then heard a knock at the door, and startled me because it was a knock that I've never heard before. Every one of my roommates had a certain knock, but this knock was more like a pound. That every time I heard it, I felt my heart pounding along with it. I slowly walked to the front door, and I took a deep breath before opening. My father used to tell me to count to 3 if I was ever scared, and to fight the fear where I've ever got. To take another breath, and knocking continued, and I slowly began counting. 1, 2, 3. When I opened the door, there was nobody in sight. I looked to the floor, but there was an envelope, an envelope. I picked it up and examined it. There was no name or anything. I opened it. My heart was knocking as I pulled out a black card. Economy was written on the other side of the other. We're waiting for you. Then they were haunting me, probably watching my every move for the past 2 weeks.